Great question. Was the rise of cannabis because of its use as a tool, because of its religious properties, because of its medicinal properties, or because it got people high and that was a good thing? And the answer is yes. Yes, indeed. It's one of the coolest parts about studying this plant is that unlike most plants that we have where they serve a couple of purposes, cannabis is such an amazing multivariate plant, and the use of it arose in different times, different places because of how useful it was. But the other major plant medicine throughout all of history is opium, and it's very helpful as a painkiller, but you basically use opium as a medicine or for the spirituality of it. You don't use it as a widespread piece of industrial tool like you do with cannabis. And so I can dive into the history of all of this. This is the absolute best book on the subject, Cannabis Evolution and Ethnobotany, by Merlin and Clark, but I'll cover it really quick right here. Probably the first uses were because it was useful. Hemp probably arose in Central Asia. Maybe it's Western China. Nobody's probably ever going to be exactly sure, but it is a useful rope. And as much as people talk about the stone tool revolution, the fiber revolution was at least as important, because it not only did it allow for hunting with fiber, it also allowed for the transportation using fiber baskets. And so it also allowed for the domestication of the horse, which was huge for humans, and then eventually it was used for sailing and boating, which opened up the entire world to commerce and trade and allowed us to really easily find each other. So it was an incredibly useful tool right from the beginning. But also, of course, it was a medicine. It was a really easy to use medicine. And when we look at people today who are well connected to the plants around them, you can understand that cannabis quite easily would have been found to be a medicine with a wide array of purposes. And you can see this in all of the oldest pharmacopoeias that we have, from China to the Assyrian medical tablets to the Egyptian papyri. They are filled with references to cannabis, to the very first that we know. And then also there's spiritual uses. Taoism itself, the first Taoist temple was from an cannabis-inspired dream, and that's how it got started. And then finally there is the actual psychoactive effects itself. Just like alcohol helps bring us together, so does cannabis. That's a useful thing for a tribe. And the most famous story of that, of course, is from Herodotus, who's known as the father of history. And he was talking about the Scythian people. And they were having a funeral. And what did they do for this funeral? Well, they took giant bundles of hemp and threw them on top of the fire and then all danced around it. And that's how they celebrated the passing of somebody. It was cannabis bringing them together. So it's been so influential in human history. It's beautiful.